All right, so good morning, everybody. My name is Michelle Vasquez. There's some people here that I recognize and some new faces, so I'm very glad to see you. I'm a PhD student in the Dreeben School of Education. I'm also the president of the Doctoral Student Association this year. I'd like to welcome you for coming today. Thank you so much for coming in person and online. This is day 2 of the Graduate Studies Research Symposium. We have a full day ahead of us with presentations, and we're really excited for everybody to share their research with us as well. And first, what we're going to do this morning is I want to introduce Dr. Ashley Love. She is a professor in the Graduate Studies program, and she is going to provide opening welcome remarks for the symposium. So I'm going to turn it over to her now.
Thank you so much. Let me see. Let me remove the. Are you able to see me on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So welcome everyone. My name is Dr. Ashley Love, and I want to welcome you back. And those of you who joined us for the first time today, welcome again. It is our first hybrid research symposium, so we have participants joining us in both in person and virtually. And the theme of this research symposium is Level Up, Educating Whole Scholar for Community Building, a Healthy Mind, Body, and Spirit. Once again, welcome to day 2. Yesterday, Dean Stout reminded all of us about being a scholar at Dreeben School of Education. And our keynote speaker, Dr. Ortiz, enthusiastically shared his expertise in action research for community-based settings, explained his wins and losses, and emphasized the importance of reflective practice, as well as advocacy. And then lastly, we learned from your colleagues who presented on financial literacy on Puerto Rican women, mass layoff and consequences using autoethnography, and mass media and leadership. We had a rich discussion on each of the presentation, and all of us definitely leveled up. So for today's morning session, you'll learn about gender, culture, generation, interpersonal communication, online education, and readiness during COVID-19 pandemic. The student spotlight, and it will take a long lunch break where you can communicate and also collaborate and also exchange some new ideas. And of course, those of you who are with us virtually will take our lunch breaks on this side. In the afternoon session, the presentation will focus on using action research in domestic and international settings, and influence of teachers and stakeholders on perception, student success, and creation of new school internationally. All these are podium presentations to ensure full participation from both in-person and virtual setting. So I hope you're ready for today's informative symposium. So I know for many of you, it is your first time assuming the role of a scholar as a graduate student at UIW program. It's been especially tougher for those of you who started the program during the unprecedented pandemic. I want to talk to you about self-acceptance and self-compassion. These are two that you need to succeed in academia. When I was a doctoral student at Columbia University in New York City, I pondered if I would ever graduate since I was surrounded by brilliant minds like Nobel Prize winners. My life was very fulfilling. I had 2 master's degrees and was working full-time in a profession that I absolutely loved. Still, I kept feeling very insecure and constantly asking myself, would my research be good enough to measure up? Then I remember seeing this quote, and I'm going to share it with you. I just can't remember the author's name, and I have it on the screen for you. Now go, make interesting mistakes, make amazing mistakes, make glorious and fantastic mistakes, break rules, leave the world more interesting for your being here, make good art. Well, I realized that all the scholars whom I admired have failed countlessly and learned from their glorious and fantastic mistakes. They took big chances that many did not to conduct their groundbreaking research and live their adventurous lives. So with this realization, I was able to accept who I was and began to direct all my energy into finishing the work that mattered to me and not worry about how I measured up. This set me free since my greatest fear was failing. And failing is how we grow, learn, change, and pivot. I'm sure this feeling is mutual. The more you learn, you realize more you don't know. There's so much to learn and understand in this world. Hence, all of us become life learners. Remember, you're good enough to be a scholar right now. Don't be paralyzed by anxiety. Continue to take actions. Keep living your life. Don't be consumed by academia. Be fulfilled in all aspects of your lives. All the degrees will not make you feel satisfied. Ask yourself, are you enjoying this academic journey? As scholars, we need to have self-compassion. We need to take time to feed our minds, body, and spirit. As I mentioned yesterday, please take a moment to listen intentionally. Enjoy this moment to learn from your colleague's presentation and fill your soul with nuggets of wisdom during today's symposium. Make sure you connect with each other and faculty members. Remember, great, amazing research is never done alone. They're done in collaboration. I cannot wait to hear what you've learned, and I will see many of you in my classes. Before I pass the mic to Michelle again, I want to thank the DSA officers, Michelle, CG, Melinda, and Alyssa, for all their hard work on this symposium. They are one of the most motivated, dedicated, and driven group of strong professional women whom I had the pleasure to work with. We probably can definitely save the world together. A million thanks, and I'm going to pass the mic over to Michelle. Thank you again.
You want to?
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Love. So next, what we wanted to do is have a state of the DSA, kind of let you know where we're at with DSA. A lot of exciting things going on. First I want to talk about what is DSA and what's the purpose. So the Doctoral Student Association is part of the Graduate Studies program in the Dream School Education. And what we do is we engage and support UIW doctoral students in their professional and academic endeavors. And the purpose of the DSA program is to support the doctoral students in the school with the opportunities for social and cultural exchange, dialogue of graduate studies, experience, mentorship of new students, and the formation of networks among students, professors, and alumni for the enhancement of professional goals. We also wanted to talk a little bit of who we are, each of us as DSA board members. Again, I'm Michelle Vasquez. I've been in the program, I guess it's going on 3 years now as a doctoral student. My concentration is adult education, social innovation, entrepreneurship. I'm really excited to be here. I've been a digital communications professional for 15 years, and I've worked at UIW for a little over 5 years now. But it's just been a great experience for me to be with you in the classroom and in and out of the classroom working on research. And I just wanted to introduce myself a little bit better as the DSA president this year. And next, I would like to know if CG is our vice president, if she can share a little bit about herself as well.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm joining you online. As many of you know, I am days away from delivering my first baby. So I'm very thankful to have this hybrid option. I am in my third year within the program, and I have been studying a bit on some community-based participatory action research over the past 2 years. I've been joining in with several different projects with Dr. Ortiz alongside Michelle and our wonderful team. So I've really been enjoying my journey so far and really just practicing what Dr. Love was talking about, self-compassion, and trying to make sure that I'm really focusing on this journey and being more intentional about listening to everything today and all of your wonderful research that you have going on. I know it's helping me, it's motivating, it's inspiring. So I'm just really grateful to be here and to join you today.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Alyssa Kennedy. I'm a doctoral candidate at the Dreeben School of Education. This is my 6th and hopefully final year in the program. My concentration is in organizational leadership with a specialty in adult learning and teaching. I have been very lucky and blessed to work with many past and present faculty in the Dreeben School of Education as a graduate research assistant and also as a teaching assistant. My goal and my hope as secretary of the DSA, of course, is number one, to make sure that you understand what that means as far as your membership. And also to make sure that you know that we are here to support you in the needs that you may have. If you have any questions at all about being a GRA, a TA, or just being a student and balancing life, I am always happy to have a cup of coffee or other beverages we won't mention here. But truly, I've loved my time at UIW and I always love to pass that on. So welcome, and I look forward to meeting you if I don't know you already. Linda?
Hello, my name is Melinda Jimenez Perez, and I am the DSA treasurer. My concentration is organizational leadership. I am a doctoral candidate. I forgot that's what I am, a doctoral candidate. And my research is action-based research on financial self-efficacy of Puerto Rican women. And I'm excited to be here. I was thinking yesterday how far we've come from 2 years ago when I did my first DSA presentation to today. So thank y'all for being here and excited to help and serve. Let's go into financials and officials. For our balance right now, we have $1,300 essentially to put on events, which if you know anything about money in business and events, that's not enough. And that's what Alyssa's going to go into in a little bit on to how we can make that better for ourselves, but not only for to have events like this, but get to know each other outside. And like Dr. Love said, do more than just study and work. So hopefully it bonds a little more.
Thank you. Thanks, Melinda. So a couple of the things that we would like you to consider and to keep in the back of your mind, and Michelle will go over this further, is we would like to put on more events and to socially get together and also have other opportunities for you as a doctoral student and candidate. Fundraising is something that we are looking into. If you are interested in being a part of those fundraisers or being a volunteer, please email me. I know we sent out a survey at the beginning of the semester, and thank you so much for those of you who responded. I actually had about 9 people who signed up to be on our volunteer list. So that is much appreciated. If you'd like to reconsider that and be put on that volunteer list for upcoming events or to be a part of our fundraising, just send me a quick email and I'll be happy to put you on that list. If for any reason you did not receive that survey, reach out to one of the DSA officers. We'll probably send that out again right before the semester starts once we get the new enrollment. That way we can keep an eye on how many members we have. Please bear in mind that I will be going through the membership on our Facebook page. I want to make it a little bit more I want to consolidate it to see who's alumni, who's active, and who is in a candidacy phase. That way we can see where we're at as far as what type of events that we hold for you, and also what kind of resources we have available for you. For example, job postings or other information that would help you along your journey. So if you're interested in any of that, or you have any questions about your membership with the DSA as secretary, I'd be happy to help you with that. But of course, all of the officers are knowledgeable, or they will find the resources for you. Thank you.
All right, so also we wanted to talk about some events that we've had recently. We've had some social mixers, which were very well attended. We had a financial literacy type of resource event online. We also have some upcoming events or opportunities of working with the McCray Museum, of having a tour and having a dinner, thanks to CG having a connection with her organization that she works with. We've been wanting to also, that's why fundraising is really important as well, having fun, professional development workshops and activities for students regarding research initiatives. And hopefully we can have an end of year social. So we are going to be working with Office of Research and Graduate Studies and others across UIW to work on implementing some of these ideas that we have as well. But your support is really needed, and greatly appreciate if you can offer any assistance as that as well. We are also actively going to be continue to recruit people, as I mentioned, to volunteer and to support DSA, be part of DSA to see it grow as well. So that's going to complete the state of DSA at this time. Oh, yes. So do we have is there any questions before we close out the state of DSA in person or online?
I have a question.
Yes. So
Do you have it set up if someone wants to contribute? Is it a profit contribution, or is there a website or something?
yeah, so the question was, is there a way to contribute to DSA if there's a nonprofit status?
It would be nonprofit because they're small. So yes, and I'll have to get more information.
Yes, so you can contact Melinda, and we also have our dean over here. So we have questions, we can reach out to our dean, and we have our director of graduate studies. So we'll definitely be reaching out to you later to find out how we can, he's pointing at, our dean to find out how we can support fundraising for DSAs. So thank you. Great question. Is there any questions online? No? Okay. All right, well, that's going to conclude the state of DSA. And next, we're going to pass it to Alyssa so we can begin our presentation.
Thank you, Michelle. So just a couple of housekeeping rules before we start the podium presentations. If you can make sure that your mics are muted online, I know they are. Just reminding you if you're not speaking, and if you are in person, to make sure that your phones are muted. That way we can give our presenters the full attention that they deserve. We'd like to welcome back all of our presenters from yesterday. We thank you for coming back to support your colleagues, and we'd like to welcome the students and the candidates who are presenting at the 2022 Research Symposium today. I know, and all the DSA officers know, how intimidating it can be to get up here and present research in front of a room full of scholars, not knowing what types of questions you may get, but know that you are very well supported, and we are here to learn. I'd like to call up our first presenter, and we'll give her just a couple minutes here to get ready. Or is it virtual? In person? No, she should. Laura, are you here? Perfect. Laura Eickhoff is going to be presenting her research called Gender and Intersectionality. Please welcome Laura to present her research.
My name is Khulal as well.
Dissertation. Young Cole, Symposium, December 2022. All of them. At the top.
Okay. Okay, and then we do have a clicker, so if you wanted to do this, I think it's
Okay. This one. But if not, I can put for you. Yes. Okay. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Laura Eickhoff. I've been a student in the PhD program for quite a few years. I'm actually a returning student and hopefully getting close to graduation, being a candidate for the second time in the organizational leadership program. In my professional life, I am a human resources professional. I think the theme we have this year at the symposium is incredible. The whole scholar, the whole person. And so intersectionality is one of the theories that fits perfectly with this theme in that it talks about the various social identities that comprise us as human beings and that cannot be separated from one another. In my job as a human resource director, when COVID first erupted, I experienced firsthand the challenge that this presented to my fellow female co-workers. Since I was a young master's student, I had been interested in doing research on gender, both in education and business. And so I acquired a keen interest in how the pandemic may have adversely impacted single mothers in Texas as a result of the economic crisis that ensued. I actually had a team member who was a single mom of a Native American ancestry. And when COVID began, the rug was pulled from under her feet. She could no longer take her son to school because the school was closed. She had to homeschool him. And at the same time, depended on the job for financial and logistical support. And so that was the inspiration for my research on the impact of COVID-19 on the employment status of single mothers in Texas. And specifically, I focused on the involuntary unemployment. It's a huge topic, lots of opportunities for research going forward, but a lot has been said about women losing jobs in disproportionate amounts than men, and also about voluntarily leaving the workforce because of not being able to balance work and life. But in this particular case, I was interested in how the pandemic caused involuntary unemployment of single mothers in Texas. So let's see.
If not, I can. Yeah, okay, I'll do it. It's okay.
Thank you so much. I'll just, it's possible that I have to point to
Maybe this way.
this way. Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. It happens. So by the end of 2020, it became clear that women had lost a tremendous number of jobs, over 5 million since the beginning of the pandemic. Comparatively speaking, men lost a little bit over 4 million jobs during the same time period. I'm focusing specifically on 2020, which is the first year of the pandemic. Back then, we didn't know that the pandemic, by all intents and purposes, is still going on. What we have to do is look at what's happening in China. So it is something that we're living with and that we're learning from, and we may need to learn from for future needs, because this is not going away anytime soon, and we may have to live through it again. Now, traditional economic recessions tend to penalize male workers in larger proportions because of the impact that traditionally occur in manufacturing and construction, production businesses. This particular economic downturn was different. It really impacted the service industry in larger proportions, specifically because of the social distancing requirement that happened almost overnight and had to be implemented. And the service industry has tremendous implications. You know, it spans from retail and hospitality to education and healthcare. And we know that the women comprise the largest component of the service industry. So little by little, the puzzle started coming together as I was analyzing the data. We also know that minority women tend to work in the service industry in large proportions. Let's see, perhaps the next, okay, great. So the study is really focused on single mothers in Texas to determine whether they had involuntarily lost more jobs in 2020 than in 2019 at higher, in higher proportion, disproportionate ways as compared to dual parent households. My initial impetus was the consideration of human capital theory, which is strongly founded on education. Human capital theory has been around for a long time. Adam Smith actually published a book in 1776 talking about human capital theory. And in a nutshell, human capital is the economic value of the worker, is what each of us brings to the table in our professions in virtue of our skills, education, communication skills, even personal brand and marketing. So what our worth is from an economic standpoint and how we can enhance that, clearly education is the number one factor. There are limitations to human capital theory. It heavily resides on the observation of education and skills as the primary drivers of human capital, and how women traditionally invest or are allowed to invest less in human capital for themselves, hence creating a situation of pay inequity, gaps in earnings. It has been mentioned that human capital theory has a limitation. It has a single focus, and therefore needs to be one of the lenses that we consider in studies of this kind. And that has been as Dr. Love well knows, and some of my friends that are in the group today, has been the biggest challenge for me is to formalize the conceptual framework to really provide a solid foundation for the analysis. Human capital theory was not sufficient to analyze why, in the event the data proves it, single mothers fare even more dramatically than the rest of the female workers in a pandemic situation that requires social distancing. And that's when in my research, I encountered intersectionality theory, and the light bulb went off. Intersectionality is a theory that's also been around in different forms and shapes for centuries, but was truly popularized in the late 1980s by Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw. And it started as primarily an observation of Black feminist theory and how African-American women, in addition to being penalized as females in the workforce, have to face additional potential discrimination in virtue of their ethnicity and their race and ethnicity. It's a theory that's so compelling and so thought-provoking that it says we are not just one person. That's why the whole person exploration is so important. What we are is the intersection of numerous social identities, our gender, our race, our social class, our sexual preferences, etc. Only the combination of those factors truly describes who we are and how we fare socially and economically in virtue of our multiple identities. How do we apply human capital theory and intersectionality to explain the situation that single women experienced in Texas during the pandemic? And why is it important? Why does it matter? It matters because Texas has the second largest economy in the United States after California. It is the 10th gross domestic product producer in the world. And yet, over 5.5% of the population of Texas is comprised of single mothers. Their inability to contribute to our economy, without even mentioning all of the social implications of what this does to the welfare of children, to the welfare of the mothers, to everything that has to do with the wellness of our citizens. If we just focus on the business outcomes, which usually captures the attention, at least in the world I operate, I always have to come up with metrics that show how what we do impacts business. It is a circle, right? Everything is reinvested and can help the people that contribute to it. In 2019, the Texas economy was $1.88 trillion. So by addressing this issue, at a minimum, we will contribute tremendously to an economy that can further be invested in the welfare and the wellness of our citizens. So it behooves us to think that if we provide additional support to single mothers in times of crisis, and you create structures and processes that prevent the bleeding of single mothers from our economy in cases of financial downturn, it benefits society at large, and not only the individuals involved, but primarily those individuals involved. So a bit of citations on related aspects of the topic. We talked about how men traditionally are more negatively impacted by recessions. This was not the case. This is not the case during the pandemic. Data started showing that, echoing human capital theory, women with high school diplomas or less were obviously the most penalized in that they had fewer choices in terms of employment and couldn't really be marketable at a time when social distancing prevented them from keeping their service industry jobs. Particularly important is the research by Diaz, who shows that although a lot has been said about people voluntarily leaving the workplace, at that time in 2020, most of the unemployment was generated by involuntary layoffs. So employers took it upon themselves to eliminate jobs because they were not sustainable, whether in restaurants, hotels, schools, or places of healthcare. Interestingly, the fatherhood premium took place. So even those men who, even among the men who lost their jobs, there were fewer who lost their job, even all things being equal. Like even those who had low education levels were likely to keep their job from not being involuntarily laid off during the pandemic. More statistics about the incidence of female single mother-led households in America, in Texas. So in America in general, 27.9% of female-headed families live in poverty. So one more reason for us to be attuned to the needs of this particular cohort. Dual parent families experience half the level of poverty. And then something that knowing, it's almost like Aristotle would say, a transitional thought here. If more minority women work in the service industry, and the service industry was the most impacted during the pandemic, it goes without saying that we can see that more minority women lost their jobs during the pandemic, and especially those that didn't have additional options because of not having logistic or financial support at home. So we talked a little bit about a human capital theory study, the limitations of human capital theory, how it's necessary to add additional lenses in order to properly analyze this phenomenon, and how intersectionality can be defined as the mutual influence and interaction of the various social categorization that comprise the whole person, the whole individual, the theme of our symposium. From an intersectionality perspective, gender is a key component, but it can only be understood in relation to the other person's identities, not just as a female, but as a female with numerous other social components. So the purpose of the study is to identify the demographic and socioeconomic factors that are primarily responsible for the unemployment, involuntary termination of single mothers in Texas at the end of 2020 as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. So what are the predictors of this study? And in what proportion do these predictors impact the phenomenon that's going to help us identify opportunities for being more effective the next time a pandemic comes around, because there's no reason to believe that it's not going to happen. So we're testing human capital theory and intersectionality theory. Human capital tells us that lack of education limits single mothers' job opportunities. Intersectionality theory tells us that the single mother status implies lack of support at home. So the fact, the social aspect of being a single parent impacts lack of support. And if you have lack of, basically when you're living in social distancing, that's a key aspect of sustainability. The high incidence of minority single mothers and the service industry not being compatible with a more work option. So the hypothesis is that gender, education, family status, race, and industry are predictors of involuntary unemployment of single mothers in Texas during the pandemic. COVID-19 being the moderator factor that exacerbated potentially this phenomenon. So our hypothesis, the questions that we are asking are that single mothers in Texas lose more jobs in 2020 than in the past, and if so, are the losses more exacerbated for individuals in single parent households? What are demographic and social factors contributing to this phenomenon? And at large, what the implications are for societies where single mothers are disproportionately penalized. And our hypothesis is that those 5 factors are predictors of the particular plight that single mothers experienced in 2020 in Texas. So the data, the very large data sets come from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. They're available through the National Bureau of Economic Research. The data is coming from the current population survey, which is the census that occurs monthly, thanks to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The survey is administered to a sample of approximately 54,000 individuals every month. For periods of time, the same sample receives the survey. The survey is telephone-based, by the way, and it's I'm working now on scrubbing the data, and we have about 8,000 cases in Texas per a particular time period. The methodology for the sampling is a multi-stage probability collection of data, which is proportional to the size of the state. Texas being particularly large benefits from having a large data set. Okay, the proposed research design is to, obviously the dependent variable is the employment status. So it's a dichotomous categorical variable. Either you were employed or unemployed at the end of the year. So it's categorical. And the logistic regression is the methodology of choice because it's appropriate when you have dependent variable that's categorical, as it is in this case, and it enables to assess the impact of multiple factors in the particular phenomenon. It was always the intent to have to begin with a quantitative assessment of the impact of COVID-19 on the employment status. Lots of research opportunities can stem from this. Let's see the next slide. So in general, this is my, there we go. Logistic regression is a form of binary regression used to estimate the parameters of a logistical model. So basically it tells us the probability, the likelihood that a certain case will fall in either one of the categories, employed or unemployed. We plan on using stepwise logistic regression so that we can assess one at a time the impact of each of the factors and whether they belong in the final model that we plan on developing. Limitations of the study, obviously there's a local focus. we're looking at Texas. There's my own personal position that I have to be cognizant of. And the fact that the data set is large and has tons of not only cases, but also variables that are, I counted almost 200. So it's really challenging to, it's an opportunity, as we say in HR, it's an opportunity, not a challenge, to really focus on the correct variables for the particular analysis. Thank you so much for listening to me and not watching the soccer game.
Are there any questions for Laura online or in person?
Yes,
We have a
the lady in the
couple.
back, we have two.
I think the school communication, prevention, and adequate revision, and also when I applied for small dogs. When I applied for small kids, it was or babysitter. So my question is, did you consider the assistant that the government was state and provide? I know this out there assistant if you apply, you'll get anything in 2 months or 3 months. By then it would be just limited. All you did cards are involved. So I don't think like considering the assistance of the government, something quick to single moms would be something considered. What should we do?
Laura, before you answer that, for those online, the question was related to, is she looking also at opportunities or what barriers are with government assistance for these single mothers? The audience member also commented that she would related very much to this presentation, like I'm sure many of us do.
Thank you so much for your question. Hearing your voice makes me feel like there's merit in doing this research. And that's exactly the objective, to generate enough data to show the importance of improving the social structures that can support single mothers going forward. For nothing else than the economic benefit that the whole country can generate. That's usually a powerful argument. We know that that's not the only one. Your well-being, your children's well-being is priority, but how do we get funding to make sure that this happens? We show the direct correlation with the economy. And so even though the study doesn't address that per se, the hope is that the results of the study will provide a foundation to advocate for better support for women like you who had to deal with this crisis in more ways than one. Thank you so much for your testimonial. Yes.
Sister Martha Ann.
They need to hear the questions. Okay. And I'm really, because I work in this room so much, if you're going to ask a question, come up here because you're going to frustrate everybody if you don't. I've been in this in the 70s with the UN, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, the Sustainable Development Goals. We are working on gender goal number 5, the inequality of women and girls in the world. If we keep at steady progress in 40 years, will be equal in the world. The research you're doing is critical and important. I constantly work with Brother Patrick. I work on women and gender studies. I'm going to the vice president on Tuesday saying that we've got to do more consistent funding for research about gender inequality. And this isn't a question. I want to commend you, but I want to invite all doctoral, all grad students working on gender inequality to be in contact with me because we're trying to develop programming for March. Okay? And Yesenia Al-Khulal is constantly on WhatsApp with the women in the rainforest. We're doing this for the women in the rainforest, not just those of us in this room.
Thank you so much, sister.
Thank you.
Can you provide your details?
Dr. Lisa Brown has her hand raised. Dr. Brown?
She said, did the literature speak to how although some mothers may be single, the fathers may still be involved in the life of the children? Did your research speak to those CDC studies?
I think this is an excellent question. Thank you so much for raising it. I did not encounter a lot of specific mentions of how the fathers operated in this particular context. Because the survey addresses directly the respondents, it focused on the predicament of the individual and her employment situation. I think what you're mentioning, Dr. Brown, is something that I have an opportunity to research further. Although it may not have impacted the employment status sufficiently. Had the fathers or the spouse of the other gender or the other parent, whatever, been more involved in the situation, possibly the individual may not have lost their job or may have had other opportunities. So definitely a great opportunity for further research. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Laura. Let's give Laura a round of applause. Thank you, Laura, and good luck with all of your endeavors. Next, we would like to welcome Mr. James Green III. The title of his research is Generations as Culture, Examining Generational Differences Through the Lens of Cultural Dimensions. Please welcome James to the podium.
Yes. Okay, I'll try to be quicker.
I don't know if the clicker's working.
We'll see.
Oh man. It kicked
Yeah,
me.
I can't do it.
Share screen, sorry.
One moment.
Okay. Did it work? I think I didn't do anything, so it's.
I think so. It might. All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is James Green. I am a doctoral candidate here. I've been in the program for 7 or so years. I'm presenting my research today on generations as culture. I've been in leadership in the knowledge work world for approximately 25 years now, primarily in multi-generational and multicultural workforces, both as a Russian linguist turned information operations professional, cyber security warfare professional, and now purely in cybersecurity. So which those professions tend to draw a pretty wide breadth of both cultural and generational workforce. So that's kind of where my interest went when I throughout just the entire program. But in reading about generational research, looking at the generational research, I noticed some disparities that just didn't sit right with me. Primarily, that we don't really know where generations end and begin, and how we decide them is very, we'll call it fluid. The generational definitions that we use are based on the different definitions that come from the Pew Research Center. And in 2015, Pew went back and they actually, I guess they had many questions about this. So they actually published a methodology for how they define generations. And there is absolutely zero consistency. So the criteria that they use to define a generation varies from generation to generation. A lot of it is around social issues that are in the public eye at the time. So an example would be, an interesting example would be the attitudes toward LGBTQIA, et cetera, people in society and their equality and their opportunities and an acceptance of marijuana usage were some of the criteria they used to define the last generation. I'm pretty sure that wasn't an issue back in when they were defining the silent generation versus the baby boomers. I don't think they really had much concern about that at all. And they based their generations on a book called Generations by Strauss and Howe, published in 1991, which is good research, but quite honestly, Strauss is an economist and Howe was a playwright. So not a lot of social science there, not a lot of really good theory on how we define generations. Yet, we all, especially leaders and business leaders, but not just in business, organizational leaders across the world, make assumptions and decisions based on these generations every day in HR, in frontline leadership where I work, in sales and marketing. We all make decisions based on this stuff, but there is really no good foundational, there isn't really a good foundation on how we're defining this and how we're making these decisions. So being someone who, well, we'll get into that. So what are some of these generational differences that we talk about? When we look at the research, and when not just research, when we look at the lay media, when you're out on the internet, when you're talking to people at work, you're talking to people in your classes, we hear a lot of different things about generation. There's a lot of opinions. And a lot of these opinions date back to, well, there was a clay tablet dating from a Syrian clay tablet dating from 2800 BC, where the author, the writer, scribe, was complaining about the irreverence of the children and how they were going to ruin society. So since 2800 BC, at least, people have been talking and writing about all these generational problems. And a lot of the themes are the same. A lot of these are the same things that we have a pretty diverse group here. It's the same things that they said about us. It's the same things that we're saying about the kids today. Things like they're lazy, right? We've all heard that. And we've all probably said it. They take too many risks, or they don't take enough risks. They won't leave their parents' basement because they're scared to go and face the world. They won't even make their own phone calls because that's just too difficult. You know, they're too scared of what people might think of them. They don't invest, plan, or plan for the future or vote. They don't have a very, very long-term outlook on life. They don't think about anything beyond today and what the next video game they're going to play and going out with their friends that night. They have issues with authority. So I'm a proud, for whatever definition you use, I'm a proud Gen Xer. You know, I wear that authoritarian issue with pride. Or here lately, we've seen this a lot. They're socialists, or they're fascists, or they're communists. You know, they only think about themselves. They only think about the community. They don't think about where this money's coming from. They don't know what gender they are, what bathroom they should use, how they should dress. And you hear this today. But I mean, I remember a Bob Seger song that was pretty popular a couple decades ago, talking about not being able to identify a woman or a man walking into an old redneck bar, you know? So, and you can't, hard to see up there, but it says, whatever generation are too selfish or too altruistic. They're too giving, they don't care about themselves, or they're too selfish, they only care about themselves. So when we think about a generation being lazy, that can also be rephrased as performance orientation. We talk about their risk taking and their appetite for risk can be defined as uncertainty avoidance. They won't make their own phone calls. Well, that's nope. Sorry. That's probably my fault. That's assertiveness. They don't invest in the future. That's their future orientation. They have issues with authority. That's their comfort with power distance. They're socialists, they're fascists, they only care about social issues, they don't care about people, they don't care about whatever. Collectivism. They don't know what gender they are, they don't know what bathroom to use. That's gender egalitarianism. And selfish or altruism is their humane orientation. All those things, when you, all those things together are the cultural dimensions as defined by the Globe study. So the Globe study was first conducted in 2004, first published in 2004. It was a study, it was a large-scale study really meant to solve the problems of Hofstede's cultural dimensions, meant to solve the criticisms around Hofstede's cultural dimensions. Hofstede was conducted solely around IBM employees. The original study was funded by IBM, and it was only around IBM employees. So that very much narrowed the field of work that we're talking about. And it was global, but it was only the countries where IBM was operating. So what Globe set out to do was correct those issues, but take it farther than just defining cultural dimensions, also defining a endorsed implicit leadership theory. Actually building a leadership theory around leading multi-generational or multicultural workforce, which it did. It's widely regarded as the model for cultural dimensions, cultural differences now, and it corrected a lot of the criticisms from Hofstede. Of course, there's criticisms around the globe as well. There's always going to be criticisms. That's academia. And they're actually even conducting it again this year. Started in 2020. Of course, 2020 happened. So they've concluded all their data collection and they're redoing their study again and doing their analysis now to validate their previous findings over the last really what boils down to 2 decades. So that's not supposed to be white. Okay. Sorry, that's terribly hard to read. That was not supposed to be that color. But the results were a number of cultural dimensions, actually increased the number from 7 to 9 cultural dimensions from Hofstede. Address most of the criticisms that allow us to make comparative analysis between clusters and actually change the way that we lead. As I mentioned, it resulted in a culturally endorsed implicit leadership theory, which provides practical guidance for leader behaviors in an increasingly multinational global workforce and economy. These are some examples of some of the outputs, some of the charts that are included in the Globe study. The polar chart gives an example of where these cultures lie, so you can actually compare your own culture with somebody else's, and make leadership decisions based on that, or marketing decisions, or decisions in general. And again, same thing with cultural visualization. This is very similar to Hofstede, what's down there. Okay. So my proposed study is that I recreate the Globe study. With the Globe project was based on hierarchical linear modeling, at least in the context of their cultural clustering. But rather than look at it by location and cultural cluster, I want to examine it by birth year cohort. In order to keep this focused and keep it down to test the theory and test the model first, we'll focus on a single cultural cluster here in the US, part of the Anglo-cultural cluster. And just like Globe did, look for statistically significant differences between those dimensions between the birth year cohorts, to either support the use of this model or fail to support the use of this model. Behind. And this is what it looks like. So those cultural dimensions, just visualized, feed into defining cultural clusters. There's I think 14 cultural clusters around the world, which then informs the culturally endorsed implicit leadership theory, which then directs leaders' behavior and organizational standards. And my intent is that we will be able to do the exact same thing around around birth year cohort rather than cultural cluster. I have no intent of testing all of it, but I do want to test the cultural dimensions against the birth year cohorts. Fully understanding that in addition to the standard demographics, race, color, or race, gender, and some other, and the other typical things that we look at, that regionality, educational attainment, and socioeconomic status will have will be special demographics of interest, knowing that they make a pretty significant difference in culture, and therefore have the opportunity to skew my results for both your cohorts. So I will be paying close attention to those. So, as alluded to, my research questions are: to what extent can these both birth year cohorts within the U.S., again part of the Anglo-cultural cluster, can be defined distinct along the globe's cultural dimensions? What are the other potential factors that I mentioned? And really, the end goal of this, beyond being able to build a leadership theory around it, is can this model work not only for defining current generations, but for predicting future generations? Can we use this to actually define when Generation Z, or whatever we're going to call the next generation, when they emerge, rather than waiting 5 years until they reach adulthood and looking back to say, okay, wait, these guys are enough different along these lines that we've arbitrarily decided that they are a new generation, which is basically how we do it now. And I fully expect that either I'll have a supported hypothesis that gives us the ability to define these generations and potentially support the application of a leadership theory towards a multi-generational organization. Or if it's unsupported, quite honestly, in my mind, it questions the very idea of generations to begin with. All right. That's what I've got. What are your questions? Yes.
I have a question.
Sure.
About your study, just finishing systems of belief. Why don't you let the people online hear it? Go close. Oh,
there's a mic right here.
Frustrating.
It's right here.
I'm right here.
There's a mic right here. Yeah.
Okay. A lot of your study, just finishing systems of belief, really can relate to the cultural dimensions. So thank you very much for that review. My question would be on the generational categories: millennials, System X,
Yep.
G. How do you plan on bringing those type of birth year cohorts in? Or are you looking at redefining those types of categories?
Will test the rough generations that we use now, the rough definitions that we use now, mostly for the purpose of testing, but also look at some sort of defining where the start and end points lie. So by doing it by birth year cohort, I can actually have the opportunity to kind of looking at the differences, and when those differences reach a level of statistical significance, you actually be able to shift the start and end date, as the case may be, left or right, or potentially find out that they don't actually exist at all. Yes.
So you mentioned the 3 phases of the GLOBE project. Do you know if there's any variances in between those? The time period, there's technology that could be a factor between, desired workplaces and such.
So the 3 phases, this is the first time that they're repeating the first phase, the 2004 phase, and that's what's coming out now. The second phase was actually looking at, so the 2004 study was looking at the relationship between worker expectations and leader behaviors, really focusing on frontline leaders. The 2014 study was focused on senior leader, CEO level behaviors and worker expectations. So this is the first time they're actually going back and recreating the 2004 study.
Any final questions for James?
Any virtual questions?
Virtual questions?
All right.
Thank you so much.
So I would ask if anybody's interested. Part of the reason I'm presenting today, because I've been in this program for a while, is I'm looking to recruit a committee. So if any of the faculty or participants are interested, I'm very much interested in having in adding to the committee. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, James, and good luck in the future with your research. Our next presenter is going to be coming to us virtually. Ms. Rekha Pants. Hello. The title of her research is The Perceptions of Teachers on Social Relationship Between Teacher and Student on Interpersonal Communication During COVID-19 Pandemic in Elementary Schools in North Texas. Rekha, welcome. And when you're ready, please share your screen if you have a presentation, and we will give you a 5-minute warning once you hit the 15 minutes. So you have 5 minutes for questions.
Okay. Hello, good morning, my respected chair and my committee members and my teachers and my peers.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Rekha Khulal Pant, student in UIW. Today I'm presenting on perceptions of teachers and parents on interpersonal communications during COVID-19 in elementary schools in North Texas. The study is qualitative exploratory research methodology case study, as I will be exploring the perception and experiences of teachers and parents on interpersonal communication during COVID-19 pandemic. The trend of teaching and learning during COVID-19 was online, different than the traditional teaching and learning due to the risks of contamination. The switch in education system from face-to-face to online created lack of connection between teacher, student, and teacher parents, influencing the social relationship between teacher, student, and parents that impacting the positive outcome of students. The social relationship is built between individuals and becomes stronger when they interact and communicate effectively. Communication is the transfer of messages between sender and receiver. The lack of teacher-student engagement during COVID-19 impacted the communication between them. Interpersonal communication or interpersonal communication style is the form of the communication that is dependent in the immediacy between individuals. I am talking here about relational and interactional communication that may include conflict, relation maintenance, self-disclosure, and communications between individuals. The study is important for the use of the interpersonal communication skill for practice in educational field for practicing teachers and novice teachers. Now I'm addressing here the needs, problems, and significance of the study. The study is needed to understand the perceptions of teachers and parents on the interpersonal communication and its impacts on the social relationship between teachers, students, and parents within the different format of educational development during pre-COVID, post-COVID, and current situation. The problem includes, one problem is the excess student absentees, less teacher-student engagement impacting students' positive outcome, less connection between teacher and student and impacting social relationship between them, broken trust between teacher and parent during higher crisis of the COVID-19 pandemic, lack of respect due to lack of respect due to the ineffective course program, lack of motivation due to lack of autonomy and interest and skills of teachers, lack of confidence on teachers resulting into burnt out risks. The significance of the study includes, the study will analyze teacher skills and experiences. It will fill in the gaps in the literature, as it will provide a selective overview of interpersonal communication skills with relevance to the communications. It will inspire further investigation. The positive outcome I expected from the study is I expect to see developing educational communities. I like to see hand in hand of teachers and parents and solve the issues. I would love to see melting boundaries between teachers, students, and parents. My research questions are, how do teachers describe interpersonal communication with parents during pre-COVID, post-COVID, and current? How do parents describe interpersonal communication with teachers during pre-COVID, post-COVID, and current? Are their perceptions different? What is the significance of the results on educational community? What is the significance of the results on educational communities? The scope of my study This study may help in the planning of schools and programs. It may help develop effective teachers preparation programs and training programs. It may help in creating healthy scholar educational communities. The purpose of my study, the purpose of this exploratory qualitative research methodology case study is to understand the impact of the interpersonal communications between teacher and parent and student during COVID-19 pandemic elementary schools in North Texas. This study should help solve the challenges in interpersonal communication between teachers, student, and parents, and improve competence in teachers. My concept is based upon the interpersonal communication theory of O'Toole. According to O'Toole, 2020, the interpersonal communication is the verbal and non-verbal interaction between two individuals influencing the response and reaction of one another. Tool proposed the transactional mode of interpersonal communication where the messages are interpreted to get the meaning of them. The two individuals take the role of sender and receiver where transaction of information occurs between them. Thus, interpersonal communication is fostered through human interaction, practicing communication that increase confidence, respect, and trust, and empathy and support motivational of individuals. During the communication, there could be some barriers. It can be physical, psychological, or any like environmental, but O'Toole outlines the possible barriers to communication such as cultural differences, gender, age, and life experiences, as well internal and external factors that may impact the response, and suggested that these barriers need to be understood, recognized, and considered to have a successful interaction. If the barriers are not overcome, there will be the ineffective communication or poor understanding of effective interpersonal communication that may lead to negative consequences or weak social relationship. In communication, the mutual understanding of respect, trust, interest, and attention leads to value of other individual. In turn, leads to positive connection, establishing a good social relationship between individuals. The effective communication leads to positive outcome of individual and relationship is maintained. As you have seen in this conceptual framework, there are these problem diagnoses, and for the sustainability and stability in the time, the relations should be maintained. And for this, like human trust, building trust, maintaining trust, respect to each other, less anxiety, process for less anxiety, confidence development, competence development in teachers, as well the positive rehabilitation, restoring the relationship will bring satisfactory, restoring the relationship is the satisfactory state of the human being, individuals. Sorry. Now the ontological realities, the qualitative case study based, this qualitative case study is based upon the ontological realities will describe that the teacher, student, parents are interactional and interconnected. As students learn from teachers in school and learns from parents in home, the nature of realities in the study will be multiple truth, as teachers have various experience with various students and parents. Epistemologically speaking, this study will require a qualitative research case study research methodological approach to engage these multiple truths to construct new knowledges from varied backgrounds, description, and feelings of the participants. My methodology is a qualitative case study, and the research design includes data collection. I will have 2 to 3 elementary schools from the school districts. My research setting area will be 2 to 3 elementary schools in school districts. The participants will be teacher and parents. Teacher of all subjects teaching in the knowledge holder in the study will be teacher and parents, and teacher of all subjects teaching in grade 3 to 5 with 3 to 10 years of teaching experience. Teachers with experience in teaching during COVID-19 pandemic will take participate in the study. Parents of children studying in grade 3 to 5 will participate in the study. The sampling will be purposeful sampling, convenience sampling. The sample size of teachers will be 10 to 12, and the sample size of parents will be 10 to 12. The research, The research design will includes the data collection through interview and focus group discussions of teachers and parents both, individual interview of teachers and parents, Zoom meeting, one-to-one by 55 minutes to an hour. The data collected will be recorded and transcribed. Each 10 to 12 participants of each group, parents group and the teachers group. Focus group discussion of same group of teachers and parents separately. 10 to 2 participants of each group, recording and transcribing. Zoom meeting for the approx 60 minutes to 90 minutes. There will be self group moderator or self note taking in focus group discussion will be outlined online. So there I have selected some interview questions for teachers. What differences do you see in interpersonal communication style with your student during COVID-19, post-COVID-19 current? How do you describe the limitation and advantage of teaching online during COVID-19? Can you describe how was your communication style during COVID crisis? What were the challenges you faced in the interpersonal communication with the parents during COVID crisis? How do you describe how the interpersonal communication impacts the social relationship with parents and student interaction with each other and themselves during COVID-19? Interview questions for parents. What was the difference? What was the difference? What was the difference in the interpersonal communication between you and the teacher during pre-COVID, post-COVID and current? What were the advantages and disadvantages of face-to-face vs online communication? When education system faced adversity due to COVID, how did you lead to communicate with teachers of your student? What were the challenges you faced in the interpersonal communication with teachers during COVID-19? How did you employ the interpersonal communication with the teachers? Why was it necessary? So my methods includes the data analysis. It will be codes and coding process, in vivo and in process coding, the categorizing and theming, grouping similar codes and apparently related codes together. After codes and categories are analyzed, I will develop an extended theming process, sentence and statement that will identify what a unit data is about and what it means. The limitation, interpretation and reporting. I will interpret the analyzed data to make meaning of the findings in the study. I will prepare a report of the findings in my research question in a narrative question form. I will interpret the findings based upon the community, the perception, the teacher and the parents, and common themes will be highlighted. Eventually, my research reports will in the form of document prepared to my advisors, faculties and graduate committees. The limitation I found. The limitation I found out I assume the loss or lack of participants, small sample size, time constraint, barriers and interpretation of data, face-to-face communication is difficult, limitation on transferability. But the further limitation will be I may find after the research. So there are my references. Thank you. If you have any questions, is there any questions from?
Do you have any questions here? Michelle has a question here. Hi, I'll talk loud. I'm sure if you want to take off the. But I'm very excited to hear about your research. I am very excited about the interprofessional communication, working with parents. In my research, I work with parents and children with disabilities, and what's come out a lot was working with parents in education, with special education is something I'd like to talk to you about offline. But are you thinking of what type of target audience are you looking at with parents? You gotta.
My audience will be the school district manager, policymakers, and parents and practicing teachers and novice teachers.
Okay, I'm just.
The voice is broken. I mean.
I apologize.
No problem. No, I just wanted to know again, I guess if you were looking also for specific parents as far as grade levels, male, female, you know, what if there was specific demographics that you were.
Heterogeneous, yes. The teachers and parents will be from the heterogeneous group.
The teachers, thank you.
And yes. so that I will get the different perspectives.
There's a question back.
Wonderful, thank you.
We have another question, Leanne.
I maybe more a suggestion than anything, because I think that a broad span of ages from 3rd grade to 5th grade is going to encompass different types of communication styles and requirements. Have you considered like maybe narrowing it to one grade level and, you know, really focusing on that grade level and what it looks like for there?
So I'm focusing on to 3 to 5 grade level because 1 to 2, they are very early age, and then on computer, like it is for hard, because I'm talking about the online education, because the switch of the education style from face-to-face to online during COVID-19. So during that time, the early children, they were like, I didn't take that group because mostly the teachers from primary school teachers from grade 1 to 5, they all look into all the classes, not only focus on 3 to 5 grade, but also like the pre-primary from grade pre-primary group like 1 or 2, they are mostly like not I mean they mostly don't use the, I mean, during the COVID-19 also, they were not, they didn't use the online. I mean, the primary teachers, the schools were open for them. And so the early children for 1, 2 grade, and they studied from, they went to the school, even though wearing the masks and all. So that's why I took the grade 3 and 5.
It just seems like it's going to be a lot of data.
Sorry?
It seems like it will be a lot of data.
It will be like teachers and parents, but there will be not more questions. Yeah, there will be a lot of data, but I will analyze it according to the need of my research questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rekha. Any last questions for Rekha? Thank you, Rekha, for your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to practice what our theme is, okay? So just for a second, everybody take a deep breath in and out. Say it's a wonderful day. I'm learning a lot. I'm going to make so many connections and help my colleagues with their research.
Like hear it and I
All right.
But if it's not.
We're going to keep rolling along. y'all. So our next presenter is going to be Ms. Pamela McCray. Her presentation is entitled Perceptions about Online Strategies and Digital Readiness During COVID-19 Emergency Remote Teaching. Please welcome Pamela to the podium for her research presentation.
And I'll take one of those deep breaths.
Can you try just to see? Let's try. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's not working. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Again, I think as you heard, I'm Pamela McCray, and I'm going to share with you today basically some preliminary findings from a study called Perceptions about Online Strategies and Digital Readiness During COVID-19. So I'd like to thank Laura, and I'd also like to thank Rekha, who just already talked about it. Obviously, COVID-19 impacted all of our lives pretty substantially, not only in this room, but across the world. So next slide, please. Just very briefly, these are the topics that I'm going to cover with you today. Next slide, please. And before I get started, first of all, I'd like to give a heartfelt thank you to Dr. Sinclair and also to my other research associates. We came with this project out of a class that we had great information, and Dr. Sinclair allowed us to take that information and really practice how we would go into a qualitative study and really start learning how to apply
information and how to do coding in theory. So thank you for that great opportunity, Dr. Sinclair. Next slide, please. So I think we've all heard, even over the last couple hours, the impact of COVID. I still find it hard to believe that it's almost 3 years ago this month when we first started hearing reverberations from China about this disease that was linked to the SARS virus. And then being an educator, 3 months later, here I was having to take classes to remote training basically overnight. So the problem is COVID-19, just to think about the impact of all students in educational institutions, the estimation is 1.2 billion people, learners. Over 68% of the world was impacted. And here in the United States, we had over 19 million students in higher education, and over 3 million of those students were graduate students, which we were all part of that group. So that really created some real challenges, which I'll be telling you about today. Institutional readiness, again, most of us were caught not really very well planning for this situation. Faculty readiness, and even we as students, student readiness. Next slide, please. So the study context, which some of you might recognize, is it was a private faith-based university here in South Texas. It was actually, the study was done in the School of Education, and our key participants were graduate and doctoral students, faculty and administrators, which really included some key leadership, again, in the School of Education. Next slide, please. So the purpose and scope is the purpose, and this was a qualitative instrumental case study. It was really to explore the perceptions about online strategies and digital readiness requirements for graduate students, faculty, and administrators when we all had to go to the COVID emergency remote training. And what we were really interested here is that we wanted to know about the effective institutional preparation, the instructional support, also the training, not just for the faculty, but for the students, and the strategies. What were the strategies to ensure that we were going to still have effective education in this situation? And we all know, again, we've already talked about the impact of COVID and all of us in this room, but also the gap when you looked at the literature is there was not a lot of focus on the digital learning outcomes of adult education, especially graduate courses moving from face-to-face to now a totally online digital environment. So we also played on that. Again, we've already talked about our audience. It would be administrators, it would be department leadership, graduate and doctoral faculty, but also all of us students. What did this mean to us and what did we learn out of this situation? Next slide, please. So our primary research question, again, as I just stated, was what are the perceptions of students, faculty, and administrators on the challenges, strategies, and best practices for the multiple modalities. We wanted to understand what happened in person, what happened with hybrid, what happened with HyFlex in the digital learning environment for COVID-19. Again, we talked about digital learning environment. And as we talk today, this hasn't ended. We're still in the same environment. Our design study was an instrumental case study, leveraging Stakes framework. And also that was complemented with Miles and Huberman's code to theory approach, which again was, I thank Dr. Sinclair for guiding us through. This was actually a wonderful opportunity to collect data, code data, be able to do categorization, and then I'll share the high-level themes with you. But we did have quite a few primary sources of data. We did faculty and administrative semi-structured interviews. We had student focus groups, which some of you may have participated in. We had student questionnaires. Also, we had a wealth of course data, which is where this idea came from. We had over 90 artifacts that we did observations and actually participated with the class. Also, we had institutional archival data that was provided that was over 30 critical documents. And we also went out and pulled metadata from similar schools to see how they were handling the situation. Again, each of us took the information, we did in vivo coding, we did categories, and then we came together. We did it as independent researchers, then we came together and triangulated our results and worked together as a team. Next slide, please. So there were really 4 primary themes that emerged from all of this data. And what I'm going to do is briefly take you through each of these. We'll unpack these and we'll talk about the categories so that you can really understand the richness of the information. Next slide, please. So the first theme, lack of faculty readiness, acceptance, and adaptability. And there were really 3 categories here. The first category of data we got, and again, this was data collected from students, faculty, and administrators, was shifting teaching modalities and confusion. The information, especially from students, is that our faculty was really thrown into a situation where they were trying to teach in multiple modalities. There was lack of direction. It was very confusing. Also, faculty technology and acceptance. Back in 2020, there was not an accepted LMS. People were either using different LMSs or even using different applications. And some faculty members did not want to accept a standardized LMS. They liked their approaches, and that caused a lot of confusion for students. There was inconsistencies between the instructors, and there was inconsistencies even between courses. And the third category here is educational infrastructure and operational support. Again, I think all of us that lived through COVID, this is not unique to this particular university, learning new digital applications. And then when the students did come back to some in-person learning, some of the classrooms had been updated, some had not. And there just was not an abundance of direct support or technical help for the for either faculty or for the students. Next slide, please. So the second theme, and this is a pretty comprehensive theme, but there was a need for investment in training to ensure sustainable quality of classroom technology and instructor effectiveness in hybrid modalities. Again, the key words here is really quality classroom technology, instructor effectiveness in the hybrid modalities. And there were 4 different categories here. We've already talked a little bit about technology, but again, the problems with the different digital applications, different instructors were using different applications. Some of the classrooms had been updated, but not all of them. But there was still lack of training, even if you were using a classroom that had been updated. How do I really tie people that are in this class today and then the people that are remote together? And prepared faculty, again, our faculty were thrown into this situation just like our students. So there was lack of technical training. And even if a teacher was trying to teach in the evening, you might not have support, operational support or technical support. So as an instructor, you were trying to keep your class together, but you were also trying to be the key technician and do all the other duties. And I'm sure we've all been there. Another interesting category was vision and strategic plan. I think COVID cast uncertainty on all of us and our lives. And as students, when you're trying to struggle with new technology, different modalities, the information that came back was we really need to make sure that the university has a top-down, but also a go-forward plan. We need to understand, we need to feel safe. There was this need that we all needed to be embraced. And that's really tied also with sustainability. Especially the students were very vocal about my life is upside down. My job has changed, or I don't have a job anymore. I want assurances that my investment, my time that I've spent, especially in the doctoral program and different modalities, if I have to move, am I going to be able to stay in my same program? So again, this just really captures, you'll see these themes all kind of build on each other. Next slide, please. So the third theme is, again, getting very much, if you go down the funnel, this is very focused on the students' support needs for academic success. And flexibility was extremely important. Again, COVID really impacted all of us, especially doctoral students or graduate students who might be working in family. Did they have a job? Did they have to move? What were they going to do? They needed flexibility to know they could come in person. They needed flexibility to tie in. Also stability. Again, this comes back to, is that program going to be there? Are my instructors going to understand how to help me get through the technology? Very important. Diverse student needs. We really have this university really has a true diverse set of students. There's a group of older students that expressed, I don't know how to use all this digital technology. And then you had international students that had issues of their own. What do I do? How do I connect? People who possibly English is a second language. If they had to wear a mask, if they came to in person, just trying to understand. These were very difficult situations. And the last category here, again, I think we can all relate to, is COVID really wreaked havoc with our social lives and with our collections, our collaboration, and even our camaraderie. And this university certainly has a strong knit doctoral community. So having that camaraderie, being able to share information, that really left a void and a gap in many people's lives. Next. So the last theme, again, still focusing through the funnel, is students' expectations of faculty readiness. And there were really two key things here. The first was faculty innovation mindset. And for the faculty here, I think you guys all know you're our role models, you're our heroes. COVID was so disruptive. We looked to you for not only to give us content and delivery, but we looked for you for that support. We looked for you for that confidence that we're going to be able to get through this situation, and we're going to continue with our degrees and with our lives. And I think a great quote you'll see that I'll bring back here in a few moments is, faculty can't go back to the old way of teaching. You know, we have to move forward. So you'll see how that ties in with the findings as we go forward. And the last, which I kind of laugh, but it's very clear, hybrid environmental participation expectations. If you think about it, when we're in undergrads or business, you go learn how to have a business dinner. You know that your water, you know where your water and your butter plate is, right? Or your bread plate. We kind of threw everyone into an online environment. And even though there might have been something that talked about net etiquette, did you need your camera on? Could you eat dinner while you're in class? And just how do you respond? You didn't get to see people's faces up close. You really couldn't take the body language. Again, if we think about the presentation that was just given on the cultural dimensions, a lot of those things, we didn't have the visibility that we were used to in a face-to-face environment. Next page. So based on, again, this is preliminary findings from a study that we were working on. What those themes really bubbled up to were really 5 key findings. And we also went back to literature to say, these are our findings. What is the literature saying? And I'm proud to say our findings were also confirmed. We also did some cross-cultural analysis, and we've come up with some other conceptual ideas based on what the literature has said. So the first one is that COVID-19, it exposed a shift in how resources have to be prioritized at the institution. And there needs to be a need for proactive planning today. We can't wait because we know there will be another pandemic or a COVID-19 somewhere down the road. Also, as we've already mentioned, COVID-19 was a black swan event. We can't go back to, the landscape's been altered forever. So again, the quote that I had shared with you earlier about is, we can't go back to the old ways of teaching, is just very prevalent. Next slide. So this one speaks for itself. Institutional investment in infrastructure and support is required. Faculty, students, and I would really say for all stakeholders across the board. And then the messaging of a clear plan. Again, what came out very loud and clear is our faculty, students, and administration really needed to know, what are the plans? I want trust, I want confidence. that my plan is going to be there and I'm going to be able to tie in, even if I lose my job, I can still connect to my educational plan. And the last is that the institution really needs to create a supportive environment for all stakeholders. Again, I think that's very important. It can't just be focused on one group. Next slide, please. So in summary, again, these are preliminary findings, but they really tie into design principles for effective learning here. And so just a simple process model, again, I contend it starts with institutional leadership and investment. And that really feeds into the faculty readiness and buy-in. And that really helps you build those design principles. But at the center of this is really that institutional infrastructure, that support, and the preparation. Next slide, please. Next slide. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Is there any questions online or in person?
Okay.
Somebody has that question.
All of these presentations so far, I commend you because you're part of Incarnate Word. 10% of the population of San Antonio died in plagues. 3 young women came. 1869. You are so good in this pandemic.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have a question.
We have a question online.
Okay.
Hey, Pam, it's Tiffany Mendoza. How are you?
How are you?
Good, good. I'm just curious, are you going to be doing more on this, or what will be your next steps? How will it be used?
Yes.
Yes, actually, there is some work going on right now as we speak that you'll hear more about. But we're always recruiting, so if you're interested.
Thanks, Pam.
Have another one.
What has been discussed in regards to infrastructure to support online access for off-campus? I didn't get to finish this.
What I would like to do is, I guess, have Dr. Sinclair maybe address that as far as any plans.
Sure.
From
Could
Incarnate
you
Word.
repeat the question?
So this is Baltimore. What has been discussed in regards to infrastructure to support online access for off-campus students? And good job, Pam. If you can speak loudly.
I have no trouble speaking. So we are in conversations with the administration. I can go ahead and say, so we're not fully about Dr. Nishgalis, about these things. There is a digital divide. That's beyond the scope of what we study. But at the same time, that's an important reality that we're facing too, is off-site access. And that can be incorporated into a future study. Right now, we're interested in the transition that the university went through and how we adopted and adapted to that new reality for flexibility for our students, but also being fluent and competent as faculty and having the support we need from administration. That's an excellent question. And that was beyond what we really, the scope of what we wanted to study. But at the same time, that's popping up in the literature for sure.
Thank you. And it looks like we have one more question online from Dr. Ortiz. Okay.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I really enjoyed the presentation. Thanks, Pam. So I'm wondering, related to your point that we know we can't go back, is the new Black Swan event the speed at which the way we're going to deliver education is changing? And are we still asleep at the wheel because we're throwing a few hours of technical assistance here and there and a few more cameras into rooms, but are we really preparing for the pace at which we're going to be forced into a much more unknown dynamic way of teaching and learning?
Is that a question to me or something?
I would say Dr. Ortiz is aware that our department, in the PhD and graduate programs. So we are going, what we call it cardinal place. And so we're trying to catch up. Not we're not up to speed, but we're trying to catch up, and our faculty are developing capacities to effectively design and implement high-plex or cardinal-plex. We're working closely and putting pressure on the administration to support us. But it's really a matter of us catching up at this point. To your point, the other piece of the equation is doing this confidently, because just because you have the convenience of flexibility, that experience has to be done well for the students to have quality education. Those expectations are met, and they shouldn't be insecure about whether or not they leave or whatever the circumstances COVID brought to bear. But Dr. Ortiz, I'm not sure I've answered your question directly, but the idea is for us to catch up. Yeah.
I think you answered my question, and I wasn't referring, specifically to Incarnate Word. I'm just saying, this study is so important, and so just as you're going to highlight the urgency of the need to learn from these sorts of events and all the things you're laying out, maybe if it's true, lay out the urgency of how fast things are going. We don't even realize it right now. Like in other words, the tidal wave, the tsunami is actually arriving after this earthquake still, and we're not even aware of it because we think we're adapting. But I just think, without going too deep, I'm personally lost half the time in trying to figure out how to do this education this new way. I was good when it was all online, but when it was all in person, the in-between thing, I'm not very good at yet. And I know that we're going there, but I just wonder if your study might really lend a sense of urgency to the fact for us to pay attention that we may still be in a severe educational crisis in terms of technology change.
Yeah, right now we're at the John the Baptist stage of this. So we're just trying to be point out, Dr. Ortiz, yes. There's a point, I wanted to circle back though. Tiffany's question was, I think, critical to the study, in that this digital divide. We can't assume just because a student is attending private university that they have the capacity and infrastructure on their own to access courses using these technologies. Nor can we assume they have the training that they need. So we have a lot of work to do, I think, we being higher education, to do this well. And, the demands of adult life do complicate this. Pamela, I feel like I'm hijacking your presentation.
You've got we're in it together. Sorry. Yes.
My question is, do you think the study will lead to increased enrollment in the future?
I think so. First of all, again, we started this back in 2020. It's been a metamorphosis, as far as the three of us, and then Dr. Sinclair and I are continuing to work on another piece of the project. But I think there was a lot of, and again, I appreciate some of you in this room participated in that study, and we appreciate the candid feedback. And so that was really the purpose today, is let's make sure we did hear from students, faculty, and administrators, not just sugarcoated, but really come back with this is what was said, these are the facts. And especially Dr. Ortiz, as you said, I think we kind of feel the same way. That's why we said the COVID environment. This didn't end. I really believe we are just probably, again, at the tip of the iceberg, getting into what does this mean. Technology has come a long way. I think all of us, our digital literacy has probably increased a lot. So compared to where I was 3 years ago, although I came from a digital business environment, and luckily when I had to take my students overnight to literally from doing a hybrid class to how are we going to do a digital synchronous environment. Luckily, I had an infrastructure that supported it because that school had grown up in an online environment. But a lot of my colleagues teaching in other facilities didn't have the tools and they didn't have the training where I had just left IBM. And of course, we'd been digital for years. So.
May I get to the question? Will it attract students? The answer is yes, but the flip side of recruiting is potential. And so the question is, students currently in the program who came into it, the brick and mortar model, having their needs met. So we don't want an exodus just to have an online program. We want to retain certain students who are down here, but also naturally attract students in other parts. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much for taking.
All right, our next presenter. Hey, do me a favor, if you're online, if you don't see somebody in the online virtual world, send them a text message if they're a colleague here. Tell them to jump on because we've got a really great presentation coming up. And then we have our student spotlight. So I'm going to challenge each one of you online. Text somebody and tell them, where are you at? Why aren't you at the symposium online? Our next presenter is Soheila Sadeghi. Yeah, it's close enough. I've been practicing all morning. I'm sorry. Her presentation is entitled Online Education, Transforming Learning and Critical Thinking. Please welcome her to the podium to present her research.
Thank you. I'm so sorry. Thank you. Okay, everyone. Hello to everyone who are here and also online. Thank you for your time to listen in my presentation. My presentation is about online education, transforming learning and critical thinking. So let's take a look. So why critical thinking is important in online education? According to National Center for Education and Statistics, around 51% are enrolled in at least one distance education in 2020, and 52% taking only distance education. And the other issue that to take into consideration is that in 21st century, the practice of learning in higher education has changed, and now we need some competencies which different from past, which is critical thinking, creativity and innovation, communication and collaboration. So critical thinking is necessary for students in higher education. So taking these two perspectives into account, we should evaluated, reviewed how we can enhance it and how it is, how critical thinking is in online education. So, yes, as I said, unlike rote learning and retention for information, critical thinking requires continuous or internalization of this. And critical thinking is essential to change and transformation. So the research statement, somehow, sorry, that question, is that virtual learning environment enhance transformative learning and critical thinking among adults. So we are going to see if this approved or rejected. So what is critical thinking and transformative learning, and what is their connection? Transformative learning theory works with critical thinking, and transformative learning aim is to transform individuals' perspective by changing their way of thinking instead of only acquiring knowledge and storing for retention when needed. So critical thinking, like transformative learning, requires continuous use of internalization of them rather than only rote learning and retention of information. Mehmet in 2018 in his study approved that critical thinking is a mandatory skill for transformative learning and change.
And according to Marcek and Mazzero, which is the founder of transformative learning, it says transformative learning entails these. First, examining assumptions, underlying problematic beliefs, feelings, and value judgments, and engaging in discourse, dialogues, and to reach a tentative best judgment upon which to act until further discussion, find a better new viewpoint, and also using the transform frame of reference to take action reflectively and critically. So I reviewed 10 research papers. I reviewed 10 research papers, and these are some I found from them. So there are 4 main advantages of that arise regarding transformative learning and critical thinking in virtual education. So first is that the online environment suited to transformative pedagogy because it facilitates somehow collaboration and communication. And also it enables the student to collaborate more easily. And also, it doesn't have the challenges of prior education type, which has the power and authority. And also, online discussions are often more collegial and informal, which somehow helps to critical thinking. But there are some difficulties also here, which related to mostly socio-political, theoretical, practical issues, and methodological, technological concern without doubt, and also socio-cultural factors, which plays a crucial role in critical thinking. And even in social practice, critical thinking is complicated. And also another point is that implementing internet sources to promote critical thinking at university depends on the students' growth processes, previous experience with educational technology, and how much interaction they have in internet sources. So the study findings were that in virtual exchange project and colleges found that students gained cultural and cross-cultural communication and critical thinking skills, and it increased awareness and mindfulness of global and cultural dynamic. The other study by Rainbaum and colleagues in 2015 suggests that ambient intelligence, which enhanced by trained and experienced effective faculty, may foster transformative learning and critical thinking. Another study by Nichols and colleagues on 2020 suggested that instructional design approaches and teaching activity might contribute to transformation. And in other studies showed that the cohort model, active learning, assignments relevant with student work setting, and etc., facilitating transformative learning in online clinical doctoral programs. So based on these findings, the research statement somehow answered positively. So e-learning has allowed learners to develop critical thinking skills and research questions answered positively. But we have to consider some other points. For example, due to technical and practical challenges associated with the new online environment, which should be taken into account, and educators will face specific challenges in terms of application and feasibility. And instructors explore many ways to overcome such problems, including introducing the correct topic, engaging activities related to contents of essential ideas, and well construct online debates. So the conclusion is that learning online in higher education can be powerful and transformative experience for both students and instructors. And participants are able to see the connection between people and ideas as a result of this critical thinking, which stimulates a new understanding of socially constructed knowledge. And as a result of advancement in digital communication, students have the opportunity to use online courses as a platform, which allows them to move beyond passive consumption of digital content and become active agent of future transformation in a society that's increasingly interconnected by technology. And thank you so much for your answer.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Dr. Sinclair.
Nice job. In your literature review, did you find that was that higher education, right? The aggregate, right? All
Adult learning.
Literature that focused on graduate level education.
Yes, I think this clinical level, it was in adult learning. So transformative learning theory is about adult learning. So it can be include all of them. Yes, but we have in higher education as well. Yes, I mean, some of them for only for faculty, but we have we have in one study that was for clinical students in higher education. Yes. I remember one of them. I mean,
there may be a gap that may be worth pursuing. Actually, data collection, because when you get to there's a little maturation difference between undergraduates and graduate students.
Exactly.
And so critical thinking abilities as well, or the application of that. So it'd be interesting for a future study, maybe to focus in. You know, obviously, I'm going to be interested in graduate level online education. Nice news.
Thank you for your comment. Thank you.
Any additional questions online?
I just had a comment. Thank you, Soheila. I think you gave some really powerful information, especially just based on some of the things we were finding, some of the challenges. So I think combining some of your findings as we progress forward.
Exactly. Somehow we're related.
Great combined. I think there's a lot of power in online digital, but you also have to have the right pedagogy, you have to have the technology access. As Dr. Sinclair said, just because we have technology doesn't mean everybody can afford it. And we have a truly digital divide right here in San Antonio. Yes, that we have districts that less than 50% of people do have digital access. So
exactly. Thank you so much.
Any other questions?
Were there any online?
No,
Online?
none online.
Just a lot of wonderful job. Good
Yes,
job.
good job.
Thank you.
A round of applause there from Dr. Love. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you.
I need to.
Before we break for lunch today, we have one more presentation. Melinda will be up here to introduce.
Let me see. Can you do the slides? So, hi. Right before lunch, we have one more awesome new segment to the symposium that we're very excited. It is the first time that we have a student spotlight, and it was a unanimous vote for Brother Patrick. We're super excited to have him. A little bit about Brother Patrick, for those of us that don't know, or for those of you that don't know. Sorry. Oh, and then also after this introduction, can you please turn your cameras on so we can all give him a round of applause for those that are online. But Brother Patrick is a Holy Cross brother from Uganda. He's a high school teacher of biology and chemistry and served in different leadership capacities in Holy Cross schools in East Africa. Currently, he serves as a mentor and liaison for young women from Uganda for the Young Women Global Leadership Program here at UIW. He is in the 5th year of his PhD journey, and his concentration is organizational leadership. And congratulations, he just passed his qualifying exam. So, so welcome, Brother Patrick. We're so excited to have you. So thank you for our spotlight. Yeah.
It's so exciting to stand before you, be spotlighted. It's awesome that I'm here with you, and it's a great honor that I've been invited through the organizers. It's exciting to interact with you, my fellow cardinals, and our visitors that have attended this symposium. Just looking back, I needed to find out what makes us whole for us to embrace the idea of being our scholar. I decided to focus mostly on our symposium theme. Each one of us has a sacred space that safeguards our sacred stories. It's only when we let in others in our separate space that we are able to embrace each other, appreciate each other's lives, and we get to move together as a community, especially reflecting on our own life as cardinals. It's when we free ourselves that we are able to radiate our enriching graces to the communities we serve. As a religious brother of Holy Cross, our symposium theme reminded me of our Holy Cross mission of transcending borders of every sort, mindful of the totality of a human being, and becoming a whole scholar. Like scholars now, our ability to transcend our academic boundaries help us to become whole scholars. Because coming here, we are fixed, we are fixed on our concentrations to finish and graduate. But when we begin interacting, then we will transcend our academic boundaries to become whole. Being a whole scholar begins with self-awareness that helps us recognize the self and the other. Because you are able to move beyond your own separate space to allow others within your own space. And we become friends. Being aware of how we influence or get influenced by others makes us whole. And that's what brings us here. Reading from Henry Nouwen's book on discernment as a religious, and I know we all discern in what we do, but as a religious, I have my brother here, Brother Eickhoff. As we discern together or as an individual, you get to know what you ought to become or what you ought to do for a particular mission. Then we are able, according to Henry Nouwen, to widen our self-awareness through the lens of divine guidance. And he says, we experience divine guidance through the books we read, the nature we enjoy, the people we meet, and the events we experience like this one. We have listened to so many people talk, share with us about their lives, how they have invested into their research. But they are not for the sake of their own publication, but they are intending to change the lives of others. Indirectly, even you want to graduate, but at least you are targeting to change the life of another individual. And that's what makes you a whole scholar. Through the different guidance, our academic journey guides us to engage with others through the works of mercy, social justice, and create a difference in our own jurisdictions. We can authentically ask ourselves how our education or passion for writing empowers rather than oppresses the intended audience. How do we include them? How do we transcend our academic boundaries to socialize with others? How has my education transformed me to embrace social justice? I like one of the courses I took. I like the book on scientific pedagogy, or you can call it sensing and thinking pedagogy by Rant, Laura. She observes that the work of transformation is not about changing what is out there. It is about transforming what is in here within you, what is in here in our community, our internal views and our assumptions. That's the beginning of transformation. That's the beginning of transiting from being a scholar to a whole scholar. In writing an article or a reflection, or even a story, we share who we are, our intellect, our social, emotional, and spiritual self. For those who took the course on compassionate research, I did not take it, but that's what makes you a compassionate researcher, because you are emotionally in it, intellectually in it, socially in it, that you transit into that complete person that understands the environment and the self as a complete scholar. I may not have gone to church or to mosque or temple or synagogue for years. That one doesn't stop me from being a spiritual person, because our actions as cardinals help us to connect with our spiritual self. I may not be religious, but I become spiritual through the actions that we do that represent who we are, our internal core of humanity. Rant further emphasizes that our hearts should remain open to see the new world, to gather strength and courage to work only on those things that keep us present and alive. How do you keep yourself present and alive in these hard moments of writing a dissertation, of defending, doing your qualifying exam? How do you breathe? How do you breathe that the breath of grace through our incarnate community? What keeps you whole? As a whole scholar, you are cognizant of other people's needs and appreciate who they are. Their needs move you to want to do something about them. Such an awareness drives our empathy toward helping and appreciating others and seeing the essence of the environment we live in. We become students who want to learn to socialize freely and open to learning and creating learning communities beyond the walls of our differences. To me, becoming a whole scholar is to be aware of and embrace the spirit of learning. As much as we are in the four walls of a classroom, how do we learn beyond the courses that we do? For example, Charles Orozok and Satin Bajaj reflected on the concept of a whole scholar. And they said it is geared towards learning to learn within and across disciplines, thinking about thinking, and our ability to network. To me, I call it the spirit of discovery, the gift of interdependence. I wanted to look at what would really bring out the whole scholar in us. I thought of a metaphor, and this one I attributed to Dr. St. Clair when we did Systems of Belief, think about metaphor. I thought of a metaphor of a cross-sectional tree trunk. A cross-sectional tree trunk has a pith at the center. Next. That pith, as a biology teacher, a chemistry teacher, I would call myself a scientist, it stores essential minerals and water, not for its own sake, but for the sake of having the whole tree grow, get nourished, and produce fruits. So what does it mean? It distributes the essential minerals across all the layers and above. So I looked at what would be the representation of a whole scholar. The pith at the center is the whole scholar. But as we come here, we come with rough edges because we are narrowly focused on our own concentration. We don't care whom we meet, but we need to graduate and go. And that's why, as I was drawing, I created a red line that you have to struggle to get out of yourself to understand others for you to do well in class. But in that way, you have come with rough edges, and then you enter into interacting with others. Those are the layers we create of friendship, the layers of classes that we do, and the layers of the professors that we deal with. So once we are able to peel off all the layers, then we understand our own selves and then understand the other's needs. And then we move forward together as cardinals. And that's what brings us here, for us to make a change in the world. Even though you may not know the person sitting next to you or those with us online, something unique brings us together here. The desire to connect, the desire to belong. Our belongingness begins with welcoming gestures of smiles, but is just a starting point to get to know one another beyond the self. When we look around, we see smiling faces, but we cannot tell what goes on within the individuals who are smiling at us. It is when we peel off the layers that we come to discover who they are within ourselves. As I started, it's when we allow them in our sacred spaces that we get to know each other and support each other. And then we come to appreciate those genuine smiles from the individuals that we stay with. Our awareness of the surroundings through the divine guidance would not let our gifts, our shared gifts, fall into cracks without nourishing the layers around us. Those cracks should not stop us. The exhaustion, the frustration in class, those are the cracks that will hinder becoming a whole scholar. You remain as a scholar. you need to transcend our academic boundaries to jump off the cracks and share your gifts as a cardinal, as a lecturer, as a professor, and everything that we do. We have seen, felt, and experienced divine guidance through the founding mission of UIW through the Sisters of Charity of Incarnate Word, which has nurtured the cardinal community to serve those around us. I know we have read our mission every day, and we may be having it at heart. Our mission invites us, next, cultivate the development of a whole person and the values of living, of lifelong learning. As a cardinal community, our university invites us to support each other in the search for and communication of truth, thoughtful innovation, care for the environment, community service, and last of all, social justice. Through our collective efforts as cardinal community and educators and students, we vividly live the true legacy of our Sisters of Charity of Incarnate Word that invites us to create new roads for every student to reach their full potential and create a positive change in the world we live. The service that we do, the hours we create, we accumulate, we are actually serving others outside ourselves. Our awareness of what we are up to going forward creates resilience in us to sustain our academic journey because we know our mission. We are here for something bigger than our own selves. Regardless of the challenges we encounter, we know we are not alone. Sister Mother is with us here. We are all positioned to create a safe space for every individual that is with us. Because such a desire acknowledges the presence of others, their position, their influence, and their freedoms. Academic freedom. You know, when we were dealing with the qualifying exam, they said, please choose the topic of your liking. Academic freedom, write on what you want, as long as you are following the rubrics of UIW, because it also follows its own academic freedom, and we are trained within the limits of it. But our wings are not like folded, we are flying as cardinals together to get a change. It means then that by becoming a whole scholar, the essence of our scholarly writing moves us to focus on something more significant, something impactful, something that makes sense of today's world, that makes us whole. As a whole scholar, I do not write stories to make myself known, but to see how impactful it becomes towards the community I serve. Reading from John Maxwell's book on leadership, Developing the Leader in You, he says that each one of us is both influencing and being influenced by others. How do we influence others as cardinals? Such a description reflects the position of us as cardinals pursuing wisdom as scholars. Then we become individuals who intentionally influence the environment and remain open to being influenced by it. Writing as a skill only brings us closer to whom we desire to become the influencers. Whatever you write, you're actually influencing yourself as you influence others who read your own work. our eyes become open to existing social justice. We see our education just as a doorstep to helping community engagement as we stand with those in need, the oppressed. Then we become aware that how our education has prepared us and for the world to reflect on the meaning of our existence, like how Paulo Freire in 1970 re-echoed the words of Socrates, know thyself. When Socrates said, an unexamined life is not worth living. So as a whole scholar, you are always examining your actions, your life, and going forward. So you are actually trying to know yourself every day, day in, day out. And that's why you are here. Being a whole scholar opens doors of dialogue with others. And Paulo Freire reminds us that it shuts those doors of self-sufficiency. No one is complete. We are all on the road running. I'm so happy I know Dr. Tees may be with us today. When I took action research last semester, I know we had our moderators with us here, Merinda and Michelle. So when I took action research last spring with Dr. Tees, I had a wonderful experience meeting and interacting with Drs. Israel and Victor, the authors of self-in-field methodology. Self-in-field methodology helped me to learn how to live, to learn how we live under the influence of so many fields. Some we are aware of and others we are not. And it is when we engage in self-reflection that we learn how we influence and get influenced by our surroundings. We come to learn from things that we have always taken for granted. We learn to ask questions that seem to have obvious answers. And we don't ignore them because they are never obvious, because they create a new understanding. And we get surprised by new knowledge that emerges from what seems to be our daily routine, what seems to be monotonous. The immediate example I can give of those who have impacted us on body, mind, and soul, and have impacted communities beyond us, our professors, represented by Dr. Libe Marquez, I don't know if she's with us here, and Sister Martha, who is with us here, who have taught young women across the globe to become whole scholars. Through such young women, the world has come to learn how UIW community, through the Sisters of Charity of Incarnate Word, listens to the voices of those bowed down by gender inequality, cultural oppression, and our indifference to diversity. Looking back at our own experience during COVID, most of us could have experienced despair, loneliness, anxiety that seemed to push us to the edge of withdrawing from our academic pursuits. But we succeeded this far. Why? Because we were with others as a cardinal community that supported us, and they are still supporting us today. And it's an invitation that we support others going forward to become whole scholars. Not only scholars to live just for the head, but our whole person, mind, body, and soul. When I look back at myself as a religious of Holy Cross, our founder, Blessed Basil Moreau, is a French from France, urged us to offer education that helps young people to completeness. And he emphasized the balance between the heart and mind, faith and knowledge. Like my own congregation, our symposium theme invites us to plant a seed that empowers the whole person in mind, body, and soul. Like the divine providence led the Sisters of Charity of the Incarnate Word to start our university, the Incarnate Word. The same providence continues to drive our mission to mold us into scholars driven by love, care, and kindness, and inclusion. As we journey together to create new roads for every student to reach their full potential and create a positive change in the world. As I conclude, as I sum up my sharing today, to end with Ubuntu philosophy. I am because you are. And for the writers, Obo and Weddle, 2013, they expanded it to a person is a person through other people. It is about cultivating one's humanity, where Ubuntu is fully lived and expressed through communal care, sharing and development of human relations as cardinals that we get to lift up each other. Then we can probably say UIW, University of Incarnate Word, has nurtured us into a whole scholar, into whole scholars. That we can go out and share our knowledge with pride, with our heads high, because we are complete, not only the head, the heart, and mind as well. Bless you all. Thank you for giving me this.
Thank you. On behalf of the DSA, we'd like to thank you for spending time with us and letting us know about the whole scholar. Thank you so very much. Thank you. And then, so after that, we are going to take some time to digest. So we are going to go to lunch now, and please be back by 1:15. We have lunch in the back. Yes. Yes, and then we have a question, but we'll be back here at 1, so to reconvene at 1. And also, don't forget to sign in if you haven't, please. Yes. I know we have a question in the back and then one in the front. Yes, Dalia? No? Okay. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sister.
Brother Patrick, thank you. And you perfectly set up the invitation that I want to share. There's a gathering for faculty. We really need you graduate students among us. Wednesday, December 14th, 10:30 to 1, including lunch. And it's at the Heritage Center of our sisters. And it's really critical education theory. We have an exhibit on our Mexican American sisters. Since 1870, we have had Mexican American Incarnate Word sisters. They are heroes. They are heroes in being university teachers. They are heroes in being terribly prejudiced area and transforming social situations. So I put it in the chat box, but over lunch, I'm going to have the registration form up here. And I know during lunch, you're going to register. So I know how much lunch to get for you this afternoon. Thank you all. This is so fine.
Thank you. So yes, just a friendly reminder, 1 o'clock, we're going to start again. Thank you.
Say me, I know the register to that.
Yes, we handed up.
No. Oh, yeah, so, I mean, is there something else you were planning to do?
No, so he's gonna put a slide in the music, but let me do that. Music, and she can put the slide up. Yeah. Well, it's over here. Yes, it's right. It's over here. This is the one that's right.